Yeah, I'm going to go through this very quick because most of what I am going to say is repetitive of between what Emily and John just said. And Originally, this talk was going to be given by Paul Metro of Pennsylvania, but he couldn't make it here, so I'm delivering his presentation, and a lot of it is repetitive to what we had, so I'm going to kind of zip through it. I think this is the key right here. I think the question is this a problem? And the answer from Pennsylvania's regulatory standpoint is yes. Marcellus Shale and gathering lines is a big problem in Pennsylvania. So I went right to the bottom line. And then kind of Paul's presentation kind of works its way back, and I think most of the stuff here has already been talked about. So I'm going to zip through this quick. The gathering line definitions, the transmission line definitions, the final rule, 2006, we've already talked about most of this. This is all kind of pre-Marcellus Shale, and we went from boom, this is bust to boom, I guess, and these regulations really need to be updated, or we're going to have a problem. And if it's not just in Pennsylvania. The National Association of Pipeline Safety Representatives put a group together for gathering lines, and it is across the country. We have about 30 out of the 50 states that do have some sort of gathering lines. I happen to be from a state that does not, so I'm not as an expert on it, but we will zip through this quickly. In Pennsylvania, one of the things that you see is you start to see the wells are directly on the meter. So we go right from, that eliminates this production definition, and you're going right to gathering lines. That's becoming a big problem there. And RP 80, as John says, we get state regulators in a room, and we can get 6 of us in a room and scratching our heads sometimes on the confusing and ambiguous language that is used in there. And so it's probably not, in hindsight, the best choice to do some of these things. At the time, it might have made sense. At the time, the National Pipeline Safety Representatives really didn't get too much involved with the gathering line stuff because the impetus when they do that 2006, it's probably, 4 years before that, John, when the stuff gets going off the ground. And we didn't put a group together until afterwards. So the real problem is in a lot of states is, defining the beginning point and the end point. And, there's a lot of ambiguity, I guess, on that. Trying to think here, some of the things that Paul wanted to kind of go over. There's the 2/3 of Pennsylvania. If you got 2/3 of a state that has subject to gas lines, they would want to do it. There's a picture of a drill that we've seen before, and these are the type of gathering lines that are being installed. So as John said, they smell like a duck, they feel like a duck, they're 10, 20-inch, 30-inch diameter, running at 1,400 and some pounds, 1,300 pounds. He said, the BTU content now is, it's getting to be 1,300 BTUs. Sounds an awful lot like transmission. So why should the Pennsylvania PUC be concerned with the regulation of these non-utilities? The problem in Pennsylvania is they have to be considered a utility for them to regulate them, and it's the only state in the country that does not regulate gathering lines and non-utility intrastate transmission lines. PHMSA has a jurisdiction, but because of this intrastate issue, they say it's Pennsylvania's responsibility, but Pennsylvania doesn't have a state enabling law that allows them to take care of it. So we have a quandary. Pipeline complaints are really beginning to increase in Pennsylvania, and the public is requesting the assistance of the Public Utilities Commission. And more and more residents are getting metered service. They use the metered service as a way of negotiating for those rights of way. Within Pennsylvania, the only agency that really has certified gas safety engineers, as was mentioned before, is the Pennsylvania Public Utilities Commission. The environmental group, is it DEP there? In Pennsylvania, you know, like she said, they're going to be looking at other issues, not pipeline safety and integrity. And since the Pennsylvania public utility already has jurisdiction, it makes sense that they do the gathering lines. The ratepayers are consuming the gas used out of it, and so you know, they've made a strong effort to try to take that over. So there are efforts underway. The problem is the legalities and getting laws passed are not keeping up with the rate of these things are going in. So the Pennsylvania PUC has an agreement with the DOT to enforce the federal pipeline safety regulations. That's just a regular certification. But non-public utilities become the responsibility of the US DOT because they don't have the enabling legislation. I was talking with Paul the other day, and he asked me how's the gathering line issue in New Hampshire. Well, there are no gathering lines in New Hampshire. We pretty much have a lot of granite in the ground, so it doesn't make for the right geological conditions. But one of the things that we have that Pennsylvania doesn't have is we have siting authority. I'm on a siting council for the state of New Hampshire, and if it doesn't get done at the federal level, the siting council would take care of these issues. We would put conditions on these things, and you would need that for certification. And many other states have some siting things. So, you know, that's another way of a type of regulation that could be put in Pennsylvania that might be able to help. These are just some examples of where they have some problems. So when you have most of your pipelines that are going over greater than 100, yeah, they're probably going more at 1,000. Some of them are 1,300, 1,400, high BTU contents. And there's increased intrastate transmission construction going on. They're starting to become problematic. So they've provided language to the legislator to obtain the jurisdiction, but that language is kind of, I'm not an expert on the Pennsylvania where it's going, but it's still going through the Senate's and the House's versions, and people are amending it as it's going along, and it's changing. So let's see. And you know, to say that the DOT has jurisdiction, that's great, but even if they had jurisdiction, and they don't have the people either. So, you know, either the state commissions have to get hire a workforce, or the federal government's going to have to hire a workforce just to be able to handle this large shale formation. We'll zip through these things. We talked about the class 3s. These are just definitions of class 1s, 4s. In that Pennsylvania is not asking for economic regulations over these non-utility pipelines. They just want the safety jurisdiction. Some of the issues that they're having is the local municipalities are coming to the commissions and asking for some help. These things are being located in residential neighborhoods. They're asking for emergency responder training. There's right-of-way issues involved, siting, eminent domain. Compressor stations going in are very, very loud, local noise ordinances. The water pipelines used for fracking are starting to become a problem because they're starting to interfere with the cathodically protected transmission lines. A lot of these things are going into the transmission, you know, a farmer gives a right-of-way, transmission lines built a long time ago. Now I'm running some fracking water lines that are pretty much bare steel, and we're starting to affect the cathodically protection systems of it. So it's becoming more and more of a concern, and this is something that needs to be addressed. And I think I'll leave it at that. Thank you.